Good evening. Buenas tardes. Bondage. Buonasera. Thank you very much to everybody for being here, and let me begin with a few words of thanks as it is usual on these occasions. And first of all, thank you to Alicia Rodriguez for organizing this event and for his very kind words, and thank you also to Juan Manuel Uribe to make this whole thing possible, and to Cutting House to host us. I would like also to thank Robin Curtis, who was our editor in the United States and who really helped Peter Lambert and myself a lot with the realization of this book. And many thanks to Charles Jones, whom I have known for a long time, and to Nick Piper for accepting the invitation and come and join us to discuss this book. And last but not least, I would like to thank my co-author, Peter Lambert, who cannot be here for teaching commitments, but he has asked me to pass his best wishes on to all of you. Coming now to our book and the topic, let me tell you another introductory remark. Mathematicians and common wisdom have it that 3 is the perfect number. Here you have 3 speakers. This is my 3rd book. Most of all, we have 3 very good facilitating elements: a qualified chair, a great venue, and a well-informed and interested audience. So I hope we have all it takes for a successful event. If this is not enough, my brief presentation is going to be divided into 3 parts. In the first one, I would like to tell you why this book. So why Peter and I decided to write this book, and why we hope you will read the book and tell others to read it. The second part is about the analytical framework. We do believe that one of the best features of this book, or the most distinguished feature of this book, is its analytical framework. And I will tell you a few words about it. And in the final part, I would like to share with you some tentative conclusion and launch a couple of issues for debate. Now, why this book? When Peter and I started looking at Latin American foreign policies, this is a long time ago, but when we started thinking about writing a book about it, probably the first thing that captured our attention was this wave of left of the center governments that since 1998, the pink tide, exactly, the pink tide, started spreading across Latin America with some notable exceptions, but this phenomenon captured the attention of the media, at least, and also of a number of academics. And we thought, okay, this could be a very good starting point. Why? Because if you have left of the center administration in several countries, with a quite progressive narrative and discourse, you would expect a quite assertive practice as well, so quite assertive foreign policy. And in fact, this is what you have had in the last 10 years, in our opinion, a more assertive Latin American foreign policy or foreign policies. But in addition to that, you also have a very interesting and quite peculiar combination of both ideological and very pragmatic elements. Now, my point here is, what is original in this? Because ideology and pragmatism are defining features of any foreign policy, any public policy, if you want. What Peter and I find very original in this phase, let's say in the last 10 years, is the very original way in which Latin American administrations have combined elements of ideology and pragmatism. In particular, how this mix is the result of a very considerate and calculated use of that, depending on the intensity in which they use the 2 elements, the circumstance, the purpose, or the arena. Where do they use more pragmatic stances or more ideological claims? Therefore, the big research question, the underlying question of this book is, what do Latin American foreign policies, and I stress policies, we have more than one, look like today? And how do we explain that? Now, in the light of the specific perceived tension between ideology and pragmatism, the humble mission we set for ourselves was to explore the possible motives of this combination of ideology and pragmatism, to locate the possible sources. Where does pragmatism and ideology come from? And who are the possible agents, the actors promoting either more ideological or more pragmatic foreign policies? A warning, there is no pretension in the book to come up with a general law telling you how ideology and pragmatism combine. You will find different experiences in different case studies. Our interest is to provide a framework to understand this quite interesting combination. What do I mean by a combination of ideology and pragmatism? I'll give you 3 examples. Let me start with Brazil, probably the country that currently catches the most attention in the media in Europe and North America, probably even beyond that. Brazil has very often presented itself as the champion of the poor or the underdeveloped world, if you allow me this expression. But if you look at voting patterns, for instance in international organizations, Brazilian positions coincide more often than not with the industrialized country, the big countries. So there are ideological and pragmatic elements there, or is it just opportunism? And how would you explain that? How do you explain this position? Is it just an erratic behavior? No, our answer is that this is a very well calculated behavior. Another example, we all know how strong, at least the language that President Chavez has used versus George Bush and the United States. But after more than 10 years of Chavism, the US remains by large the most important commercial partner for Venezuela. And President Chavez himself concluded or renewed several agreements with the United States. Perhaps a less explored example, Ecuador. President Correa, as soon as he took office, decided to reject and denounce the free trade agreement with the United States, but at the same time actively campaigned for the US to renew the Andean Trade Promotion and Drug Eradication Act, which is a US domestic law that allows Ecuadorian goods to enter the United States free of customs duty. So is it an inconsistent behavior that Correa and his administrations display, or is it something quite clever? So is it a combination of pragmatic and ideological element to pursue a perceived national interest? So the focus of the book is especially on the contemporary administrations, and the relevant past. Peter and I think that if you want to understand the present, you cannot forget the past. So to understand the Chavez phenomenon, the Lula phenomenon, the Dilma phenomenon, the Kirchners, and so on and so forth, you need to understand also the context, where they come from. As Mauricio Davis Munera explained, we targeted 11 case studies. These are Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Peru, and Venezuela. Plus a chapter on Latin American regionalism. Do ideology and pragmatism mix somehow also in terms of regional integration? We have so many different projects in Latin America. Now, what is really distinctive about this book? Well, in my view, it combines historical analysis and political analysis. So you have a rigorous historical reconstruction of events, and you have a deep political analysis. The book is both descriptive and analytical at the same time. There is what we believe to be an innovative analytical concept, that is this tension between ideology and pragmatism. It's just a different way to read foreign policy behavior. We do not pretend that it is any better than any other, it's just different. And we really hope that it can contribute to a better knowledge or a better understanding of Latin American foreign policies. If you believe, on the one hand, in the importance of the context, and on the other, in the importance of the human factor, the agents, you will find a lot about it. Also, this book fills a gap. There is no other book on the market on the same topic. So in itself, this is a good reason. There are another 2 books on the topic, but one is dated 1996. It's the May Centurion book, most of you will know it. And it's about Latin American foreign policy at the height of neoliberalism and the Washington Consensus age. And the other one is the excellent volume by Frank Mora and Jane Hay, 2003. So this was published before the impact of the pink wave was well studied and well perceived. And finally, the big selling points and distinctive quality of this book is the quality and variety of its contributors. We have authors from Latin America, from North America, from Europe, Latin Americans transplanted in Europe using both Latin American and European lenses. If you allow me the joke, we have also an Argentine. This is an Argentine joke coming from the author, so he defines himself as something different from the others. Just to name a few, you may have heard already Joaquin Fernandua from Chile, Miriam Gomez Saraiva, who wrote the chapter on Brazil, Peter Lambert, he is probably the most prominent Paraguayanist in this country together with Andrew Nixon, Andres Malamud, the Argentine guy based in Lisbon, who wrote about Argentina, Alex Sanchez and Larry Bird from the Council on Hemispheric Affairs in the States, Bruce St. John wrote on Peru, Stephen Randall from Canada on Colombia, Diana Rabion, Venezuela, David Close, the Nicaragua man in North America, Tony Capsia, the Cuba man in this country, Ana Covarrubias, a rising star of Mexican academia, and myself, I contributed with the analytical framework and the chapter on regionalism. In the remaining 5 minutes I have, I would like to tell you something briefly about the analytical framework and draw some tentative conclusions. The analytical framework. Both ideology and pragmatism are somehow lenses to interpret reality, in that both help you select options. But one can exist without the other in foreign policy. A foreign policy that is only ideological would be utopia. A foreign policy that is only pragmatic would easily slip into mere opportunism, or, if you allow me, short-termism, without any sort of long-term projection. We have defined what we mean by ideological and pragmatic foreign policy. Please refer to the book, and this is quite important. We don't understand as ideology as something value-biased and pragmatism as value-free. On the contrary, both are based on different values. So this is important to understand. The analytical framework is based on 5 factors that, in my view, may explain the specific combination that you can observe in different case studies of pragmatic and ideological elements of foreign policy. These are the ends and purposes of foreign policy. So if you want to join a club, or if you want to reject the rules of the club, you may have different types of behaviors and foreign policy. The means available. Well, the more means are available, the more options you have. This could create a rise in pragmatism and a rise in ideology. Experience would tell us that probably this would lead to more pragmatic stances. The agency and the human factor. We all hope, I guess, that having Adolf Hitler or Lula da Silva or JFK as president in our country makes a difference. So we don't only rely on the context or the system to explain everything that happens. I personally hope that human being, the quality of our leaders, economic or political leaders, makes a difference. The 4th factor is process. I mean, how is foreign policy designed, adopted, and implemented? Through which processes? Do we have a charismatic leader playing a prominent role? Do we have phenomena like groupthink, everybody in the circle thinking alike and therefore not assessing different options? Or do we have new group syndrome? Think of Evo Morales, very eager to show a break with the past. So his administration has to achieve something and promote and show that that something is different. And finally, the historical and political context, the structure. So things don't happen in a vacuum. There is a past, there will be a future, so you have also to assess the consequences, and there are constraints and opportunities offered in the context. These 5 factors are also an attempt to overcome a traditional level of analysis approach to foreign policy. I don't think that you can understand today very complex scenarios of foreign policies just by saying, oh, this is determined by the individual, this is determined at the country level, this is determined at the international level. We're moving towards an intermestic kind of area. Finally, a couple of tentative conclusions and one open question. First tentative conclusion. I believe that the proliferation of actors, issues at stake, forums where to discuss them, potential coalitions and allies available make the international system and foreign policy more complex, but they also offer more opportunities both for increased pragmatism and increased ideological behavior, because you will have more fora where to express it and more allies to support it. Open for you for discussion. The second point, the mix of ideology and pragmatism, as a summary, is largely determined by actors working within a structural framework. So structural constraints, but also opportunities. Third tentative conclusion, Latin America and the world today are characterized more, in our view, by coexisting tensions, say ideology and pragmatism, rhetoric, narrative and practice, reality on the ground, rather than dichotomous, clear-cut divides. Someone doesn't agree with that factor. And the fourth conclusion.
How's that? Oh.
Oops. Yeah. Thank you. The fourth factor is that the fourth conclusion is that foreign policy increasingly seems to be a continuation of domestic politics, probably a bit more than in the past. And I think this is what I would like to conclude. Now, the open question is about change and continuity. It's for you to assess whether we have change or continuity because of this mix of ideology and pragmatism, at least with 2 dimensions. One, within administrations and specific countries. So the administration changes, the foreign policy changes, or not. But there is another, broader dimension, that there is change or continuity in large or broad patterns in Latin American foreign policy and foreign policies. So that's for you to assess changes in the context. For instance, US influence going relatively down, China emerging, and other factors. So overall, given the emerging international scenario, the issues and tensions that I have briefly highlighted here and that are discussed in the book, Peter and I believe that ideology and pragmatism will remain defining features of Latin American foreign policies in the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.